Heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well.
Hello.
I'm a double.
Welcome to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and I am so excited about today's show. I'm almost nervous. We're going to have an incredible interview ahead in the first hour, actually, with Daniel Davis. He's actually a retired lieutenant colonel who is now hosting a show called Deep Dive with Daniel Davis on YouTube. I believe it's a podcast. You could probably listen to it wherever you get your podcast. But the reason why I'm excited about this interview is because I've been watching and listening to his shows over the last year, and he is just so knowledgeable about military preparedness, foreign policy. In fact, he was supposed to work under Tulsi Gabbard in the office of the DNI, and well, he got shafted because of the fact that he's been so critical of how Israel has carried out genocide in Gaza. And he's also critical about US foreign policy in the Middle East and in Iran particularly. So we will be talking with him about Iran, along with a whole host of other foreign policy issues. Of course, the war in the Middle East is taking up quite a bit of our programming today. With good reason, there's a lot to get to, and the repercussions of this war will be felt by the American people, not only when it comes to our troops, but also in regard to the economy, the global food supply. I can't wait to share the details of that with you all. It's important for us to know what's coming, so we can prepare to the best of our abilities, and you can't really rely on our government to do much to help us. Anyway, without further ado, let's get to our first story. I want to talk a little bit about the increasingly obvious difference between the United States and Israel when it comes to the objectives in the Middle East. Let's get to it.
You just said it is a little excursion, and you said it is a war. So which one is it?
Well, it's both. It's both. It's an excursion that will keep us out of a war, and the war is going to be. I mean, for them it's a war. For us, it's turned out to be easier than we thought.
Can you declare victory in this war if the supreme leader remains the Ayatollah's son?
I don't want to comment on that. I don't want to comment.
Absolute clown show, complete embarrassment. That was the president of the United States, Donald Trump. And honestly, it is becoming increasingly obvious that the White House's objectives in Iran differ quite a bit from Israel's objectives in Iran, which is why it was so incredibly stupid for Donald Trump to get dragged into a war with Iran, knowing full well that he didn't really have a plan in place for not only the military action against Iran, but more importantly, all the different consequences that come along with entering a conflict, going through with a full-blown war against a sovereign country. So we'll talk a little bit about the economic repercussions a little later in the show, but for the purposes of this discussion, we're gonna focus on the different objectives here and how it's causing a problem for the United States. Now, I'm an American who was born and raised in the United States. I live in the United States. I love the United States. That's all I care about. Okay, I don't care about Israel's goals or their objectives or their well-being. Israel is purportedly an ally of the United States, but has only gotten us into endless wars, endless trouble. So we should focus on what's good for America. Now, with that in mind, recently, the Wall Street Journal published a piece talking about the differences of objectives here. It's titled, "Trump says the Iran war is nearly won, but Israel has other ideas." Now, if I were the president of the United States, I'd say, I don't care about Israel's ideas. I care about what I want to do on behalf of my people for my country. But Trump doesn't fall in the category of a leader who cares about, his own people. So while regime change is absolutely Israel's goal here, or at least toppling the regime and turning Iran into a failed state, the US claims that it just, it simply wants to weaken Iran's military capability. That's all that Trump wants here. Now, let's just pretend like Trump didn't say recently that he wants to pick the next leader of Iran, signaling that he's also in favor of regime change. But here's the thing, regime change isn't an easy thing to do. And Iran's been preparing for this war for decades. Iran's not dumb, okay? It's a country full of highly educated people, regardless of what you think of their regime or their government. Fact of the matter is, these are smart people and they are prepared. And this war has proven to be a lot more difficult than I think Trump suspected or predicted. So as a result, it's kind of clear that Trump is kind of looking for some exit routes, okay? Like trying to find a way to get out of this. And so he's kind of backing off of his messaging about the regime and focusing more on victory. There's already been victory, essentially paving the way for a possible US exit. However, Netanyahu don't like that. The Israelis, of course, are happy to see the US spill its blood and use its treasure to fight its war. And as long as Israel insists on remaining in this conflict, the US has a choice. But our government always acts as though it does not have a choice and will remain in this conflict, which again, you're not going to get regime change unless you have boots on the ground. Is Trump willing to send boots on the ground? He says he's keeping his options open, but he also knows that that would be absolutely devastating for his administration. The American people do not want it, okay? Upward of 70% of Americans are against sending ground troops to Iran. And so again, to me, it looks like he's looking for an exit route. Now, US officials are reportedly telling the Israelis to stop striking Iran's energy facilities unless Donald Trump gives them the green light, says, go ahead and strike Iran's energy facilities, which will then lead to Iran retaliating by striking energy facilities throughout the Gulf, which is creating a terrible situation, as we all know. The Wall Street Journal also suggests that the Israelis are the ones who are carrying out the assassination missions when it comes to various figures associated with the Iranian regime. And it turns out that, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth seemed to concede that point, seemed to confirm that reporting. So here's how that went down.
What's your message to Americans, those who supported the president and those who aren't really in favor of this war and who worry that Israel might be taking advantage of the US's backing?
Israel's been a really strong partner in this effort. Where they have different objectives, they've pursued them. Ultimately, we've stayed focused on ours. But what Iran has felt is the power of the world's two most powerful air forces. In that particular case, those weren't our strikes or that objective, or that wasn't necessarily our objective. But the president has made it clear to those concerns that we're not getting pulled in any direction. We're leading. The president is leading.
The president is not leading. In fact, the same Wall Street Journal report notes that Trump and Netanyahu speak every single day, at least once a day. Netanyahu is also in close contact with Jared Kushner and Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State. US officials are also reportedly telling the Israelis, maybe cut it out with targeting certain infrastructure that's going to hurt the global economy. But it remains to be seen whether the Israelis can be reined in. It would require the United States to actually issue some consequences when Israel doesn't follow through and ends up carrying out military actions that make this situation far worse. And the real question here, guys, is, okay, let's forget about what Iran is saying for a second, and that is a very relevant part. We're gonna come back to that. But let's just say it really is, we have magical thinking and it really is up to Israel and the United States to end the war. Let's say Trump decides, I'm gonna pull out. I'm gonna claim victory. We've decapitated the regime by killing Ali Khamenei. And so now we've won, we're gonna pull out, and then what? You're just going to leave Israel on its own? I mean, I would do that. I would have no problem with that. But our government would never do that because they're all bought by Israel. So they will remain in the war as long as Israel continues fighting Iran. But here's the other monkey wrench in this situation. Iran doesn't want to stop. Iran is not interested in diplomatic discussions. Iran is not interested in a ceasefire. Iran wants to spank the United States and Israel. Why? Well, because they don't want to agree to a ceasefire. And then 6 months from now, after the US has replenished some of its military capabilities, some of its interceptor missiles and things like that, they're gonna go back in and go to war with Iran yet again. So Iran, and they've said this on multiple occasions, sees this war as a real crisis of survival. The US doesn't see it that way. Israel doesn't see it that way. Israel would like to do away with the regime in Iran so they no longer have a challenge to their expansionist policy. And by the way, if you doubt that they have an expansionist policy where they want to annex more land, why is Israel in Lebanon right now? Why is Israel in Lebanon right now when the IDF admitted that at this point, Hezbollah has essentially been weakened? They are not north of the Litani River, which is what Israel wanted. So they're annexing land in Lebanon. They've annexed land in Syria after Bashar al-Assad was toppled. I mean, it's just so obvious. But anyway, getting back to some of the reporting on this, it is bad enough that Trump is a foreign country's lapdog, let's keep it real, but it also doesn't help that he's delusional. Trump has told aides he wants to end the war on his terms, and after brokering a ceasefire in last year's 12-day war, believes he can put a stop to the fighting when he wants. Now, I say he's delusional because I don't think the Iranians are bluffing. They want to continue fighting. And this could have all been prevented if the Trump administration didn't, on not just one, but two occasions, use the negotiations falsely in order to sucker punch Iran. Again, they did it last summer. The US did it again recently in this ongoing war against Iran. And per an anonymous source with knowledge of the Israeli operations, Israel is well aware that Trump could end the war at any moment and is fighting as if every day is the last, said a person briefed on the operation. Israel wants more time, but is aware of the pressures Trump is facing at home to end the war, the person said. Now, why is he facing that pressure at home to end the war? Well, Republican lawmakers anonymously spoke to the press and said, yeah, we're worried about what this is doing to us politically, plus it's hurting the economy. Not a good look, not a good look for us. And then when you look at public opinion polling, the majority of Americans do not favor this war, are not in favor of this war against Iran. So it's unpopular and it's hurting the Trump administration's poll numbers. It's hurting the popularity of Republican lawmakers in Congress because, God forbid, they ever come out and just say, I object to this war. They have to remain silent, and that silence, it looks like they support what's going on. And Americans don't. So it's not a good look politically speaking. And it is again worth noting, it doesn't even matter what Trump wants right now because it doesn't look like Israel wants to stop fighting. It would have been far better if we didn't get dragged into this war in the first place. In the past few days, Trump has gone from claiming that the war is almost finished to stating that there's much left to do. Sometimes all within the same speech, which is great. You know, it's awesome to hear conflicting, contradictory messaging from the president of the United States in the middle of a war that is spreading, expanding. Yesterday, Senator Chris Murphy, a Democrat, gave a disturbing look into what the Trump administration might be planning. He writes on X, I was in a 2-hour briefing today on the Iran war. All the briefings are closed because Trump can't defend this war in public. I obviously can't disclose classified info, but you deserve to know how incoherent and incomplete these war plans are. I mean, Chris, trust me, we know, we can tell. He continues though. Maybe the lead is that the war goals do not involve destroying Iran's nuclear weapons program. This is surprising since Trump says over and over this is a key goal. And then, of course, we already know airstrikes can't wipe out their nuclear material. And so we're gonna just briefly interrupt Chris Murphy's incredible thread on X to kind of check in with Senator Lindsey Graham, who's been cheerleading every single conflict and war imaginable, especially the one in Iran.
When this is over, we're going to obliterate their nuclear program, and there's going to be a new dawn in the Mideast. President Trump, you did the right thing. God bless you. And Steve and Jared, you literally saved the world from terrorism.
These people are embarrassing. They should be nowhere near DC. Okay, they couldn't lead themselves out of a wet paper bag. The idea that these are leaders of our country is laughable, to say the least. They're leading us to our destruction. Anyway, back to Murphy. He writes, second, they confirmed regime change is also not on the list. Well, at least not for the United States. It certainly is for Israel. So they are going to spend hundreds of billions of your taxpayer dollars, get a whole bunch of Americans killed, 7 are dead already, likely more that we don't know about, and a hardline regime, probably a more anti-American hardline regime, will still be in charge. Actually, he's definitely right about that last part, because what people don't realize is, regardless of what you think about the IRCG, Ali Khamenei was pretty moderate compared to the hardliners within the regime. Now, his son, by the way, just greenlit the use of a new missile that causes more damage, something that his father, would be hesitant to do. He had put out a fatwa against building nuclear weapons. You think his son is gonna feel that way after almost every single member of his family, including his wife, his father, and his little girl, were slaughtered by the Israelis? You really think so? You think he's gonna hold back? Man, this is just beyond clownish. More from Murphy. He says, okay, so what are the goals? It seems primarily destroying lots of missiles and boats and drone factories. But the question that stumped them, what happens when you stop bombing and they restart production? They hinted at more bombing, which is, of course, endless war. Something that the United States seems to really excel at, regardless of which party is in charge. And on the Strait of Hormuz, they had no plan. That much is obvious if you ask me. I can't go into more detail about how Iran gums up the Strait, but suffice it to say, right now, they don't know how to get it safely back open, which is unforgivable because this part of the disaster was 100% foreseeable. It was. In fact, we talked about it on this show quite a bit. There was no plan in place when it came to the Strait of Hormuz before Trump decided to strike Iran and drag the United States into this war. So are we, as the American people, in favor of endless war? Well, let's hear from the President of the United States.
What more do you need to do militarily for this operation to end? More of the same, and we'll see how that all comes out. Right now, they've lost their Navy, they've lost their Air Force. They have no anti-aircraft apparatus at all. They have no radar. Their leaders are gone. And we could do a lot worse to one another. We're leaving certain things that if we take them out, or we could take them out by this afternoon, in fact, within an hour, they literally would never be able to build that country back.
Pull the troops out of that region, get out of this war immediately, and please, the future of the country depends on decoupling from Israel. Please decouple from Israel. Not another dollar, not another war, not another soldier. Let Israel fight its own battles. The American people are not responsible for helping Israel build its empire and steal land. We got to take a break. We'll be right back with an awesome interview. Don't miss it. I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that.
I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about your goddamn religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter, in this verse. I don't care. I don't care, I don't believe in it, and I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it.
No part of Gaza has been left unscathed. Ain't a whole lot left. I don't know why they need any more bombs. Let us be clear. The United States provided $18 billion in military aid to Israel. Netanyahu indiscriminate bombardment have killed more than 50,000 civilians, 60% of whom are women, children, paramedics, and journalists. All of this is against basic human decency. You don't starve children with absolutely no humanitarian aid getting into Gaza. It is a war crime. It is illegal for the United States government to provide Israel with more offensive weapons. History will not forgive us.
We've been on our phones too much. I feel like we just need to touch grass or something.
I told you. I mean, you know what? Let's actually do it. Let's touch the grass. Whoa. Andrew Yang? It's not racist, right? It's him.
Yes, it is I, Andrew Yang, out here giving money away as usual.
Wait, but literally?
Do you use a phone? Noble Mobile will cut your wireless bill in half every month, and you get paid even more if you log off, look up, and touch grass.
Oh, I actually have some grass if you...
I don't think that's the kind of grass.
Not that kind of grass, unfortunately.
Whoa, wait, what the...
Whoa.
I guess that kind of grass works too. All grass works.
All grass and we get cash?
Wait, did you see that, babe?
Noble Mobile, make it rain, girl, make it rain, make it. That didn't rain so good, but now it's raining good.
Corruption, injustice, the system is rigged against you. Every day we're blasted by a flurry of terrible news from every angle, which can make it challenging to stay positive and know how to fight back. The Damage Report is your solution. I'm Johnny DeRola, and my daily morning show cuts through the noise and exposes the real damage being done to our country, the world, and how we can fight back against it. Corporate greed crushing workers? We'll name names. Politicians selling you out for their corporate overlords? We've got the receipts. Climate disaster, economic collapse, the rise of fascism. No spin, no establishment talking points, just the truth that you need to survive and resist. But it's not all doom and gloom. We'd love to have you join the Dragon Squad, our community of positive-minded activists who turn the day's news into positive action. With new episodes every weekday, listen to The Damage Report to get honest news, unflinching commentary, and daring coverage you won't find anywhere else. Listen to The Damage Report on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, because understanding the damage is the first step to fixing it.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm very excited for our next segment, so buckle up. Now, as the war in the Middle East rages on and threatens to devolve into World War III, We luckily have an amazing guest who's going to help shed light on some of the, more questionable elements of this war, what the media hasn't really done a good job explaining to the American people. So joining us today is Daniel Davis, a retired colonel and the host of Deep Dive, a wonderful podcast that I highly recommend. Thank you so much for joining us, Colonel.
Thanks for having me on, Anna. I'm delighted to be here.
So you are just a fantastic interviewer, but also your experience in the military, I think, leads to the best analysis that I've seen on what's currently transpiring in the Middle East, not just with Iran, but also with Gaza, Israel's foreign policy, our alliance with Israel, and whether or not it's beneficial. So we'll touch on all of that. But I actually want to get started with something a little different, because I'm sure our audience, not everyone in our audience is familiar with you. And what I thought was really interesting is that you were tapped by Donald Trump to work under Tulsi Gabbard as the Deputy Director of National Intelligence. However, after you were named, a hit piece came out about you in the Israeli press, and you didn't end up serving in that role, which I think was to the detriment of the Trump administration. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that hit piece was about and why it is that you were, pushed out of that position?
Tulsi had told me early on in the process that there were those that were trying to get her sabotaged and to get me knocked out, because they did not want anybody in that position that said anything about the policies of Israel. And of course, I had been quite open, both in written form on TV and on my own show, about saying, hey, these policies are bad. They're not smart, and saying what would work, what would have been better. So I wasn't just throwing rocks, but they didn't want anybody. They didn't want anything to say anything at all negative about Israel. So they were trying to knock it down. But to her credit, Tulsi really fought for me, and we got right up to the finish line. And then something I only found out about last month, because Senator Ted Cruz on some leaked radio or some recruiter broadcast, not a recruiter, was it when you're trying to get money from people in a campaign event? He sold to somebody who recorded it and said that he personally sabotaged me and got me out of there because I was not sufficiently pro-Israeli enough. Not that they wanted somebody who had good foreign policy chops, not somebody who had combat experience, who definitely was an America First person. I was not sufficiently pro-Israel, so he took credit for sabotaging me, along with apparently Susie Wiles and some others that took part in that. So I didn't know that until just very recently, but I doubt I would have lasted long in the job anyway, because I wouldn't have been able to stay underneath some of these things that have happened.
Well, yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about, because there was a lot of excitement when Tulsi Gabbard was named as the Director of National Intelligence. And look, to her credit, I've had my differences with her, but to her credit, early on, she put out that intelligence indicating that Iran was nowhere near building a nuclear weapon, and in fact had not given any orders to build nuclear weapons. She was sidelined after that because of the unbelievable and outsized influence that Israel has over our government, which I think more Americans are open about and willing to say out loud. And I think it's important to say it out loud if you care about this country and want to stop getting dragged into these wars. One of the other things that you were getting attacked for, which just blows my mind, is that you had noticed that what our government was telling the American people in regard to what was going down in Afghanistan was actually very different from what was happening on the ground in Afghanistan. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I had been writing as early as October 2009, before we had the big surge, that if we didn't change our policies, we were going to lose the war in Afghanistan. And of course, in 2009, that just people, a lot of them just rolled their eyes and they said, well, how could we ever lose to the Taliban, for crying out loud? We had this massive military advantage. But I said that wars are fought for a different reason, and it doesn't matter so much who has the military advantage as it does some of these other factors. And I said we had to change these or we weren't going to win. And then when I was on active duty at the time, when I was subsequently deployed there, especially for the second time in 2010, 2011, that was when the surge went through anyway. And I saw David Petraeus talking about how in congressional testimony before I deployed that things were turning around, that this government in a box in Marja, you may remember, was working and people were turning against the Taliban. And Petraeus said, we're on the right azimuth. And, the process is fragile, but it's going in the right direction. And so I said, okay, well, I guess I was wrong. And then I go on the ground there, and my job required me to travel literally all around the country to visit all the combat brigades throughout the country, like 11 or 12 of them, to go to the frontline troops to find out how things were going and what they needed they didn't have. It was called the Rapid Equipping Force. And I find out that almost everything he said was a lie, that we were keep telling our American people, we were telling the Congress that what was progressed and what we're on the way to was all a lie, and that nothing was being accomplished at all. There was no success whatsoever, and men were dying about it. And that's what drove me to finally say something publicly, even while I was still in uniform, because I just could not keep my mouth closed while we're sending men to die, and then talk about how brave they were and how much they were helping American national security when it had nothing to do with American security, and they died pointlessly. And so I had to say something, and I did.
No, thank you for doing that. I mean, I know I appreciate it. I know many Americans appreciate hearing the truth about what's actually happening abroad with these wars. So, with that in mind, let's move on to what's currently transpiring with these attacks on Iran and how this has spread. Now, it's kind of hard to figure out what's going through President Trump's mind, because after the war started, a Gulf official who spoke to MS Now claimed that Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff were actively undermining the negotiations that were taking place, that the Iranians actually were willing to go much further than they were willing to go under the JCPOA. They were willing to give up enriching uranium, which they weren't previously willing to do. But then there was also a Washington Post report indicating that the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had made multiple private phone calls to Trump over the past, month prior to the attack, advocating for the US to attack Iran. But now it looks like Trump is looking to get out of the war, while he also simultaneously says there's a lot more to do. I want to go to the first video here. This is C1, and get your reaction to what he says here.
The situation was very quickly approaching the point of no return, and the United States found it intolerable, in my opinion, based on what Steve and Jared and Pete and others were telling me, Marco, so involved, that I thought that they were going to attack us. I thought they would, if we didn't do this at the time we did it, I think they had in mind to attack us. And
now, following that statement, the intelligence community leaked reports indicating that no, Trump was actually informed that there was no imminent threat for the United States coming from Iran. It seems like he also threw members of his administration and his son-in-law under the bus there. Like, I don't know, I just acted based on the advice they gave me, as if he's not the leader here, the person who actually makes the decisions. What do you think Trump is actually thinking? Do you think he's looking for an exit route?
I definitely think he's looking for an exit now, and he's been signaling that pretty strongly. But one of the other things in that clip that really stood out to me was he may have been trying to throw Jared and Steve under the bus. I don't know, but man, he threw himself under the bus a lot worse, because I'm like, wait a minute, you're making a war and peace decision based on a real estate guy and your son-in-law, and not, say, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, not the Central CENTCOM commander, not your CIA director, not Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, those are the people that you should be talking to about what is the capabilities on the ground, what are our capabilities, where's the balance of power, can this work? That's who you should be talking to, not those two guys. So that by itself was a big problem. But now that I think that, let's see, last night on Fox News, I thought this is the first time I saw this, that I thought he's looking for the exit. You had Senator Josh Hawley go on with Jesse Waters and say, well, I think that, there's nothing left to really solve. We should just declare victory and just go home, which of course makes no sense whatsoever on day 11 when you've accomplished literally nothing other than blowing up a bunch of stuff on the ground, blowing up a bunch of planes and boats and everything else, but nothing of the things you set out. And then today he comes out and says, yeah, well, there's really, we could call it off anytime we wanted to, because there's not much more to blow up. That's one of the things he said. And then right before I came on here with you, he says, you know what, we won. We really won in the first hour. So Epic Fury is already a win. So I think he's setting all the conditions up to claim a victory and try to walk away like he did after the 12-day war, after last year, and just claim victory and just walk away. But Anna, I don't think that's going to work this time. I don't think Iran's going to let him walk away. I don't think they're going to take a deal to where it says, all right, if you stop shooting, so will we. I think that they're going to say, because we'll be right back here again 8 months later, we're going to keep going and keep causing pain until we get something out of it this time. And I think that they're going to impose a cost on us.
It does appear as though Trump is flailing a little bit because the ball isn't really in his court for two different reasons. Number one, what you just stated right now, Iran is intent to keep fighting. They are not interested in any diplomatic discussions or a ceasefire. And yeah, they know, okay, well, we're going to do a ceasefire. The United States is going to replenish, their weaponry, and then we're going to be right back at it. So no, we're not going to do that. But the other part of this that I think is a lot trickier is Israel, because Israel and the United States have differing objectives here. Israel would like to either topple the regime and replace it with a puppet government, or just fully destabilize Iran, similar to what happened in Syria. And so if Israel intends to keep fighting and attacking Iran, do you think Trump would ever even dare to pull our troops out of the region, pull out of this war, and just call it a day?
Well, this is different also than the 12-day war. This is different than the speedboats in the Caribbean. This is different than the Venezuela thing. Americans are dead so far. That we know of, at least 7. I've heard reports that maybe there's others that just hadn't been announced yet. At least 140 wounded, and that's going to keep going as long as this war keeps going on. So you can't just keep going on forever and not having the cost. You also can't stop because the Strait of Hormuz and therefore the Gulf is blocked off effectively. And until that gets turned back on, it's going to start to cause some real problems. The longer this goes, if it stretches on another week, 2 weeks, a few months, it's going to be a real problem. And he can't hide that at home. You can't hide the casualties, and you can't hide the higher prices for everything in the United States, or that's going to undermine any even theoretical chance he may have in the midterms, and it could be even worse than he wanted before. So I think that there's pressures on him, but you're right. There are pressures on Israel that are not on President Trump. Iran is in an existential fight. Israel is in an existential fight. We aren't. We are in this is a war of choice, and we can unchoose it if he wants to, but that's going to come at a cost. Israel can't go at it alone. They can't. They've got to have our participation in it there. They can't just go in an air and missile war and drone war with Iran. It'll just be inconsequential. It's already going to be inconsequential. We don't have the military power to compel and compliance from Iran, country 4 times bigger than Iraq, that's got 90 million people, that has incredible terrain, mountains they can hide under, drone, underwater stuff, all kinds of drone capacity to keep building, etc. You can't bring them to heel without a ground component. You just can't do it. And we can't do it with a ground component because that would give all the advantages to the Iranian side. And we could go through all those details if you want. But the bottom line, there is no military attainable objective here. President Trump has walked himself into a trap. And now that it's political suicide if he keeps going, it's military damage if he keeps going also. And if he pulls out, he's going to have some real diplomatic problems with Israel. And even at home, it's also going to have some problems. I don't see an easy out for him because of the trap he's dug himself into, but he's going to have to do something. He can't just let this one meander through, I don't think.
Let's talk a little bit about the military capability of Iran, and also what in general, the American people thought of the military capability of the United States, because I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to the fact that, bankrolling and providing weapons for all these various foreign entanglements, whether it be Ukraine, whether it be all the weapons that we handed over to Israel, that led to a depletion of our interceptors. There's also some question about whether or not those interceptors are as effective as people were led to believe. And so I kind of wanted to get your analysis about I don't know if I want to call it asymmetrical nature, but just the juxtaposition of the two different militaries we're talking about here, and how Iran seems to be willing to take the hits, knowing that the US is really not as prepared as they would like to be.
Yes, that's exactly right. They're doing something that nobody else has done because America, according to President Trump and President Biden before him and Obama and Bush, it's all, they always say, we have the most incredible military power in the history of the world, as Trump likes to say all the time, implying that there's literally nothing that we can't do. We can just take everything we want and nobody can stop us because nobody's even close. Well, that's ridiculous. Of course, there's lots of people that are as good and some that are better than we are. We are a global power. We have the ability to project power better than anybody, and that includes China and Russia around the world. But that doesn't necessarily translate into having overwhelming power at any one place. In fact, because we're spread to the four winds and we have a global presence, that means that we're spread out everywhere and we don't have large numbers in any one given spot. That's the case right here. So we don't have a ground force, so we can't threaten Iran with the ground invasion. We don't have it. We don't even have in Desert Storm, where it was part of that invasion force there. We had 750,000 army at that time. Now we've got about 450. And that again is a global commitment that are spread, a lot of them in Europe, looking at some theoretical attack by Russia at some point. We don't have 300, 400,000 like we did in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. We just don't have it. It doesn't exist. Or unless you literally take the entire active force and put it out online, and then it would be a disaster too. But without that, you can't coerce Iran. So even though their military doesn't stack up to ours, on their territory without a ground force, they can endure it because understand this. Their objective to succeed and win this war is just to survive and remain viable politically and militarily. As long as they can keep launching missiles and drones and keep their political viability and just exist as a state, they'll win. Just like North Vietnamese beat us, just like the Taliban beat us. That's all they have to do, even though they're inferior militarily. We, on the other hand, have to conquer them. Trump said about an unconditional surrender. That was the biggest unforced error he's made so far, by saying there's no opportunity for you to even have a negotiated settlement because I'm only looking for unconditional surrender, a la Japan in World War II, something on the Missouri and signing all that. Now then you've told them all your options are either surrender or die in place. And so they're going to say, we'll keep fighting because we have the wherewithal to do it. And they can see that the economic cost that's going on already, the cost to our troops, the diplomatic cost at home, they're well aware of that. They know that we don't like casualties. They know that we don't like wars of choice. And if this starts costing everybody at the pump, at the gas station, at the grocery store, if it starts costing us all those, and it's not going anywhere and you're not getting compulsion, the government hasn't fallen. You haven't caused their IRGC, their military is still active. They're still throwing missiles downrange. They're still throwing drones downrange. You can't stop any of those things. Then by definition, we have failed. I don't care how big the military is. That's why everything depends on what you're trying to accomplish with your power. So if you don't have an attainable military objective, it doesn't matter how many bombs you have. It only matters what you can compel the other side to do. And right now, we don't have the means to compel compliance. And now we're in it already. And I don't know how he gets out of this without causing any more damage.
I don't know how he gets out of this either. One point that I've been making over and over again is that I just did not see, even if we had the military capability to accomplish this objective of, doing away with Iran's ballistic missile program, even toppling the regime. How does that benefit the United States? Like, is there anything in this military intervention that would somehow benefit the American people? Take Israel out of it. I don't care about Israel. I care about the United States. And this is a military that the United States taxpayers are funding, not the Israelis. So is there anything that's achievable that would benefit the United States?
Zero, no chance at all. And in fact, if we're going to be honest, Anna, and I hope people are willing to do that, this is 100%. You see, you want to talk about the Israelis, but we have to. They're the only ones that benefit from this. And even them, it's more Benjamin Netanyahu than it is Israel. He has just had this obsession with Iran. I showed something on my show the other week from 1985. 85, when he first starts talking about Iran is going to have a nuclear weapon and we can't let that happen. And all the time, all the years since that time, he has just been obsessed with it. And he tried really hard to get the Biden administration to do it. And even though Biden deferred to them in all kinds of ways, he did have some limits. And then now he found somebody in Trump that was compliant that says, yeah, sure, we'll do that part too, because Trump likes to be tough and he likes to use military, but he doesn't have an understanding that there are limits to our power. And so now then he has plunged us into a war that has nothing to do with American national security, nothing that we can benefit. This is so important to understand too. The conditions that existed on 27 February, the day before this, will never be improved by this war. We will only lose. It's only a matter, we're going to lose this much or we're going to lose this much. That we will be in a worse off position no matter how this war comes to an end at the end than we were at the beginning. And this goes even beyond the loss of lives. And I have been, especially as a former military member who's deployed 4 times, I'm especially angry and grievous that we have lost at least 7 men killed. Apparently there's quite a number also that are seriously wounded, and who knows if some of them may succumb to their wounds, and 150 total that have been wounded in one way or another for nothing, because all of it was avoidable. And so we have sacrificed their physical lives for the needs of one man, Benjamin Netanyahu. And I don't know why our president decided to sacrifice that for them.
I agree with you. I was incensed when we learned of the 6 soldiers who were killed early on, and then we learned of the additional soldier. So that makes 7 soldiers that we've lost as a result of this nonsense. I brought it up, and General Kimmett on the Piers Morgan show said that I was using a trope by sharing my concerns about US soldiers dying on behalf of a foreign country. But nonetheless, I really, really appreciate you being so generous with your time, Colonel. Your show is wonderful. Everyone, please check out Deep Dive. I watch on YouTube. I don't know if it's available anywhere else, Colonel, but if you want to plug your work, please do so.
Yeah, sure. We're on X. We publish on X and also on YouTube. It's Daniel Davis Deep Dive. If you check that out, we'll be there. The address is at Daniel L. Davis, the number 1 on X, and you can find us in one of those 2 places. Appreciate
Love it. Love to have you on again in the future, talk about Ukraine and other foreign policy issues. So thank you so much. Have a great night. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Anna. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everyone, we're gonna take a brief break, and when we come back, lots more news to get to. Stick around. All right, welcome to our first social break of the day. There was a super chat I wanted to read first. This is from Anthony, who says, Iran's been preparing for this war for years. That's why all their leadership were killed on the first day of fighting. So all the leadership was in the same building. They were meeting, and that's when the US decided to strike. They used intelligence from the Israelis to do that. And if I were engaged in peace negotiations with the United States, I would also be under the assumption that I'm not going to be attacked with the people I'm negotiating with. But the US carried out the attack, which, you know what that does? That leads to a loss of credibility when it comes to our government in future conflicts and future negotiations. So, and by the way, I think it's much braver for any country's leader to just be out in plain sight rather than hide like a little bitch like Netanyahu does, okay? With his son and wife fleeing the country as the war was popping off. But anyway, love to hear more of your thoughts. Let's go to 69 Solo, who says the current president of Iran is a heart surgeon and the current president of America is in the Epstein files. Point taken, point taken. Let's get back to the show. I now have a live read, so let's get right to it. Let's talk about ZipRecruiter. We talk about revolutions here all the time, but what about the revolution taking place in the hiring process? Right now, everyone's talking about skills-based hiring. And if you're an employer who's adopted skills-based hiring, the best way to ensure that your applicants have the right skills is ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter recommends smart screening questions to help you hone in on that perfect match for your role. Their matching technology finds people fast, and you can see who's actively searching. It's for top-rated. It is the top-rated site actually for a reason. So if you're interested in learning more, you could actually try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/TYT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TYT. All right, let's get to our next story.
You've probably felt the impacts of Iran's grip on the Strait of Hormuz from 8,000 miles away or so here in the US over the last 11 days, paying an average of 56 cents more for a gallon of gas from when this war began.
Mines in the Strait of Hormuz happening amid the backdrop of the Trump administration threatening to, sort of rain down on Iran if they do anything in the Strait.
How relatively, note I use that word, easy it is for Iran to cause absolute mayhem, havoc, and chaos with the global shipping. You can give me all the insurance you like, but if it's not safe, I ain't sending my ships, my container ships, through the Strait.
As we've been hearing, Iran has been striking oil tankers that are trying to travel through the narrow body of water known as the Strait of Hormuz. However, CNN and CBS, which is not a credible news source given who is at the head of the news operations over at CBS, they claim that Iran has been setting mines along the Strait of Hormuz, which I personally don't believe. Now, why don't I believe it? Well, because of the fact that Iran uses the Strait of Hormuz for their own economic purposes, so setting mines might not be the best idea. Plus, they are giving permission to their allies to use the Strait of Hormuz. So anyway, I just find that reporting and those claims a little suspicious. I don't have confirmation, but I think we should be a lot more skeptical of the news that we get from our legacy media platforms. But with that in mind, Donald Trump issued threats against the Iranians based on that reporting. He says that if Iran has put out any mines in the Hormuz Strait, and we have no reports of them doing so, then why are you putting this post up if there are no reports of them doing so? Anyway, we want them removed immediately. If for any reason mines are placed and they are not removed forthwith, the military consequences to Iran will be at a level never seen before. If, on the other hand, they remove what may have been placed, it will be a giant step in the right direction. And then he signs off. Later, though, he did revise that post and included the following. He wrote, additionally, we are using the same technology and missile capabilities deployed against drug traffickers to permanently eliminate any boat or ship attempting to mine the Hormuz Strait. They will be dealt with quickly and violently. Beware. Now, I want to be clear about something. The Strait of Hormuz issue tied to this conflict and war with Iran was entirely predictable. In fact, it was one of the warnings as Trump was, getting goaded to fight Iran on behalf of Israel. This is a bad idea. Iran is a civilization of 92 million people. They control the Strait of Hormuz. We're talking about a region that's oil rich, gas rich. This could have a devastating impact on the global economy. Much of our fertilizer comes from that region of the world and travels through the Strait of Hormuz. So if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, that could even lead to a global food shortage, which would be devastating. But Trump did it anyway. So with that in mind, I do want to go to this video because, and it's B-roll, let's keep my mic up and I'll explain what you're looking at. Because Trump also claimed that, the US attacked and destroyed mine-laying vessels near the Strait and later released video showing vessels getting bombed. That's what you are looking at. That's what's allegedly being shown in this footage. But there's a lot of other elements to the economic fallout that I want to discuss here, because shipping companies have been resisting the use of the Strait of Hormuz as a result of this clear security threat. I mean, Iran has been targeting vessels attempting to sneak through the Strait. So there's no question that Iran is targeting some of these vessels and oil tankers. However, Donald Trump is like, come on, what are you afraid of? I love how he uses rhetoric to try to get what he wants, but it's not working here because we're literally talking about insurance companies refusing to insure these vessels. We're talking about shipping companies who don't want to take the risk and potentially jeopardize their own crew by traveling through the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump's just like, oh, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? He tried to sweeten it a little bit by saying that our Navy will help escort the vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, thus protecting them from attacks from Iran. Now, never mind the fact that the US has not been capable of defending our Gulf allies as Iran targets US military installations and embassies throughout the Gulf region. Why is that? Well, because we depleted our interceptor missiles. So what remains of those missiles will be used by the United States to protect Israel and US troops that are in the region. By the way, those THAAD interceptor missiles are not as effective as Americans believed. So they are not good at shooting down drones. In some cases, I've seen video of several interceptors being deployed in order to take down a single missile. It's just a disaster of epic proportions, okay? But nonetheless, he's saying, we'll protect you guys. But now the Trump administration has egg on its face because of the fact that Energy Secretary Chris Wright claimed in a now deleted post on social media that the US Navy had successfully escorted an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz. Wright said that the Navy successfully escorted an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz to ensure oil remains flowing to global markets. This post was accompanied by a video of Wright's remarks in Colorado on Monday, in which he referenced a tanker passing through the strait, but did not mention naval escorts. Now, the only problem here is that it never happened. It never happened. The Navy never escorted any vessel through the Strait of Hormuz, which is so unbelievably embarrassing. This is the reason why Wright took his social media post down. It is now deleted. And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about it, and she herself conceded that the administration is full to the brim with incompetent liars. Take a look.
You explain why the Energy Secretary posted and then appeared to have deleted a post on X saying that the U.S. Navy escorted an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz?
Yes, I was made aware of this post. I haven't had a chance to talk to the Energy Secretary about it directly. However, I know the post was taken down pretty quickly, and I can confirm that the U.S. Navy has not escorted a tanker or a vessel at this time, though, of course, that's an option the president has said he will absolutely utilize if and when necessary at the appropriate time.
Oh, the post was taken down relatively quickly. Okay, then I guess it's all right. It's just absolutely embarrassing. Now, aside from the troubles at the Strait, there are all sorts of other issues because of the fact that this war has spread. It is now a regional conflict. So Iraq has shut down some of their oil wells. Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia took similar measures to curtail oil production and gas production. In fact, Qatar halted operations at several gas wells and even shut down the liquefaction that's being carried out. That's used to process natural gas for export. So you guys get what I'm saying here, right? I mean, the situation is already dire, where the supply of oil and gas has been severely limited as a result of this conflict. And as we learned from Democratic members of Congress after their closed door briefing on what's going on, the Trump administration had no plan to prepare for the economic repercussions of this war. Just shooting from the hip, who knows who spoke to Trump last? He's just going to go along with what that person had to say. This is not how you lead a country, and dragging our military into this conflict. We already have 7 soldiers gone, likely more that we don't know about yet. And we know that there are, at least 150 soldiers who were reportedly wounded, some critically, some minor wounds, but nonetheless, they shouldn't suffer any wounds, and no one in our military should be dying as a result of our conflict with Iran. Now, the situation has even gotten so dire that Trump has lifted some of the oil sanctions on Russia, which would allow some of our allies, like India, for instance, to export or to import oil from Russia. And today it was announced that the member countries in the International Energy Agency will release about 400 million barrels of oil to counter some of the soaring energy prices that we're already seeing. It will represent the largest release of reserves in the body's history and is more than twice the 182 million barrels of oil IEA countries released following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. So that's the reality of the situation. It is devastating. But I want to reset to talk a little bit about something that isn't talked about really at all, but the reporting indicates that this could potentially be disastrous if this war drags on. I want to talk about the fertilizer crisis. So, the Iran war is apparently jeopardizing the global food supply. Now, you might be wondering, how is that even possible? Well, it's possible because much of the fertilizer that the world needs in order to grow food comes from that region of the world. And right now, the Strait of Hormuz is not really available for shipping fertilizer to various parts of the globe. Now, this is a little talked about consequence of this war against Iran. And this conflict is going to drive up the price of all sorts of chemicals, including fertilizers like urea, nitrogen, and ammonia. Now, these chemicals are critical for food production, and much of it is in fact produced in the Gulf region. So 5 primary fertilizer exporters, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE and Bahrain, rely heavily on the Strait of Hormuz to export their wares. And as we've learned, the Strait of Hormuz has been effectively shut down by the Iranians in retaliation for the US-Israeli attacks against them. Making matters worse, the United States stupidly went into this war right before the spring planting season. So how bad is this? Well, according to the New York Times reporting, and they tend to, provide cover for these types of conflicts, but even they had to admit, collectively, these countries supply more than 1/3 of the world's trade in urea, the dominant form of nitrogen fertilizer, as well as nearly 1/4 of another type, ammonia. According to data that was compiled by the International Fertilizer Association, the same 5 countries produce nearly 1/5 of phosphate fertilizers. So one major source of urea, Qatar Energy, halted production this past week when it lost access to natural gas after strikes from Iranian drones and missiles. But look, for the most part, believe it or not, factories are still producing fertilizer. It's just that the Strait of Hormuz is way more important than people suspected, I guess. So they're unable to transport the fertilizer. So yeah, production has been harmed a little bit, but the bigger issue is transporting the fertilizer. And they're having trouble shipping it. And we don't know how long this disastrous war is going to go on. So the longer it goes on, the bigger problem this becomes. So this does threaten the global food supply. And while wealthier countries will likely just pay a lot more for their food, meaning us, the United States, we will likely see even more inflation when we go to the grocery store. The real victims of all this are the poor and developing countries that stand to go hungry as a result of this. And so we should also note that Trump did position the United States in a uniquely terrible position as this fertilizer shock hits the markets. Trump's tariffs had already raised the cost of imported fertilizer, forcing many farmers to hold off stocking up. The White House exempted fertilizers from its latest tariffs last month, but millions of tons of urea cannot quickly be summoned from points around the globe. So what are the experts saying about all of this? Well, why don't we go to Chris Lawson? He's the vice president of market intelligence and prices at the London-based commodities research firm known as CRU. He told the New York Times, quote, "It's bad. There's no other way of putting it. The world is highly reliant on fertilizer and associated raw materials supplied out of that region," meaning the Gulf. Jan William Earsman has a similar take. She's a chemical engineer and fertilizer expert at the Leiden University in the Netherlands. She concedes that the price of food will go up. So my fellow Americans, what do you think? Maybe it's just a small price to pay for a foreign country to hit its goals so they can expand their borders, annex land, and continue terrorizing the Middle East. Congratulations. We got to take a break. We'll be right back.
What contributions to the progressive cause are you most proud of? I mean, I don't have super high aspirations for a singular role that I can play in the movement or anything. I try to present myself as what I think that I am, which is a progressive man who is driven by I think, well-interrogated and well-organized system of values that I try to stay consistent on, and I demonstrate that that's the sort of life that a person can lead and be successful and be happy and all of that. And that should not need to be done, but there are so many people on the right that are trying to push men in the opposite direction that I want to be able to do that. Along the way, if I can get people to care about some topics that they wouldn't necessarily care about, or that for some men they might think that's not a topic that they should be focused on, that's definitely something that I relish doing. And along the way, I mean, we've been able to introduce people to a lot of candidates. That's been a big part of what we've done. Not all of them necessarily got in office. Probably most of them did not. And a lot of them you might not even remember their names. But it was great to be able to provide people the platform where they had the chance of, making a difference. Obviously AOC and all that, but there's been a lot of great people along the way.
In the bonus episode for the members, we do some inside baseball. We're gonna look at John's desk. Nice little spaceship here. Nerd. But it is kind of look cool. Who has Legos? Oh no. He's taken apart a keyboard. Who has a mouse pad that's this big? He's got a dog with a nose that you could hang something on. You know what this desk screams to me? Nerd. And that's how we like him. We love Johnny Pie. He's got his own personality like everybody does at TYT. Come meet us all in the bonus episodes. TYT.com/team. David Sorrell, Nina Turner. Adam Green drop by.
Charlemagne.
Congressman, great to have you. It's great to be with you, Chang.
Your show is a great thing. You're informing people. A lot of the shows that I live on, my CNN, my MSNBC, and even Fox, and any of the other shows, NPR, they are so quick to decide that they know what this building means today.
The one thing that I hate that politicians do, they talk about the people they should be talking to.
Do they have any idea that they're the establishment and that they're hated, or do they not realize that at all?
People are so deeply in their little universe. I think it's very easy to not really question what you're doing.
Voters have a right to ask questions of any nominee, whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
The system is duopoly that suppresses competition.
How is it the year 2024 and we're still like, maybe they'll talk about paid medical? Like, how is that like at one level it's like, this is what we're talking about now. You're like, it's 2024.
And that's always been the critique, that your critique of us is, well, you guys give good speeches, you put out good tweets, but you're not wielding actual power. Now we're starting to.
My favorite news platform by far. It's not even close.
It's about a country and a principle, and that's what you and I both work to achieve, and I'm so glad that at least half the battle has now been won.
If you want to go really hear what's going on honestly, you should tune into the Young Turks.
Thanks for doing such a great job. Please keep it it up. Hang tough. Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Oh, I like making you happy.
I didn't know about that.
This is a happy Anna Kasparian. You're welcome, YouTube.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real, positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
Innocent Americans are dying. Are dying.
Third Shift Zombie in our Twitch community writes in and says, everyone needs to check out the Lego animation that Iran put out that summarizes the war without saying a word. Well, if you are a member in our members only bonus episode today, I will be talking about that story. I'm looking forward to sharing it with you all. So members will get that. And if you're not a member, you can become one by going to tyt.com/join. Not only does membership come along with some exclusive content and access to our archives, members help keep this show what it is. You guys are the ones who give me a voice. Now that I've experienced what it's like to get opportunities ripped away from me for telling the truth about Israel, I really appreciate our members for keeping us honest and independent, because if it weren't for you, who knows where we would be? Certainly silenced. All right, and I wanted to read one comment from one of our super chatters. This is from Micah, who says, could you please inform your audience, for those who want the son of the Shah to head the Iran regime, what the Savak were and what they did? So under the Shah, it was basically secret police that terrorized the people of Iran. And when you think about the revolution that took place in the 70s, you really have to ask yourself, how did you get a country with tens of millions of people to support the ouster of the Shah, the exile of the Shah essentially, and his family, and instead, go along with this new regime, which is, theocratic in nature? And it's probably because people weren't happy under the Shah. And that's the reason why Trump mentioned, maybe the Shah's son isn't the right guy. Maybe that Reza Pahlavi guy isn't the right person because he doesn't enjoy popularity among the Iranian people. He does among the diaspora, who are irrelevant, by the way. But look, the people of Iran deserve to have the leadership they want. Without Israel having a say, without the US having a say, it is not up to us who leads that country. And by the way, maybe I'll do a deep dive on Savak in a later show, but for those who want to inform yourselves about it a little bit, 60 Minutes actually did an interview with the Shah back in the day and asked him about it. That interview is available on YouTube if you want to check it out after this show, obviously. Anyway, let's get to our next story.
We took a little excursion because we felt we had to do that to get rid of some evil. And I think you'll see it's going to be a short-term excursion. How good is our military, right? Amazing. How good? Short term. We've already won in many ways, but we haven't won enough. We go forward more determined than ever to achieve ultimate victory.
President Donald Trump's statements there really make it seem as though he's looking for an exit route when it comes to this war on Iran. But honestly, just one look at what's being dubbed Hebrew Twitter, because the accounts are in Hebrew, and you'll notice that maybe the war isn't going so well for the Israelis either. Now, you might have noticed that there is a bit of a, media blackout in Israel when it comes to what they're going through when it comes to this war, right? It's very hard to come across footage of some of the destruction or some of the pain that Iran has caused as a result of this misguided and incredibly stupid war. And that's very much on purpose, by the way, because the army meaning the Israeli army, has banned live broadcasts of the Israeli skyline when alarms have been sounded to warn of incoming missiles or drones. In fact, images of air defenses intercepting incoming missiles had been a major part of the coverage at the start of the war and was a feature in the coverage of the June 2025 war between Israel and Iran. However, this is now forbidden. That could be because of the fact that a lot of the interceptors have been failing and a lot of the missiles and drones have been hitting Tel Aviv. So some US media has also disclosed that they're being restricted in what they can and can't report and film. Everything needs to be approved by the Israelis before it's published. In fact, I'll give you a little example of what they say sometimes when they let it slip. Take a look.
We're not going to show this live because we don't show this live, but I do see interceptors going up from where I can say that we just saw one go up there. We're not showing you that because we're not going to show, the Israeli government does not allow us or want us to show where that may have come up, that interceptor, but I've not seen it intercept anything.
Again, Iran continues to show an offensive capability, launching missiles at central Israel. We have one interceptor over my shoulder right now. We can't show you because we can't show landmarks.
There was also a barrage of strikes coming from Hezbollah in Lebanon because Israel thought this was a great opportunity to reopen another front with Lebanon and go to war with them. And Hezbollah is striking back. So the thing is, I don't know what the death toll is in Israel. Like, we don't know how much damage there's been because there's very little reporting on it. And the real question is why? And this isn't really new. In fact, an investigation by the Israeli publication 972 magazine found that, breaking new records, Israel sees unprecedented spike in media censorship. That awesome democracy in the region? Yeah. Israel. They're censoring the media. In 2024, Israel's military censor banned 1,635 articles from publication and partially redacted another 6,265, part of a wider assault on press, freedom of press. They also slaughtered journalists in Gaza and recently slaughtered another female journalist. I had the devastating experience of watching her young daughter cry after learning that her mother, again, a Palestinian journalist in Gaza, was slaughtered by the Israelis. Anyway, but here's the thing with Hebrew Twitter, meaning Israelis posting on X in Hebrew, we get a bit of a peek into what's happening in Tel Aviv, and it's not pretty at all. Let's go to this post on X from a gentleman named Hillel. Everything, not this one, but there have been a lot of posts that had to be translated from Hebrew to English. But he writes, Iran just fired another cluster bomb at central Israel and killed one person with several others seriously injured. A cluster bomb into a crowded city. Dear UN, Amnesty International, ICJ, meaning the International Criminal Court, which has a warrant out for Benjamin Netanyahu's arrest because of his war crimes, and all you fake human rights activists who pretend you care about international law, F you. I'm sorry, was there a problem with the war you ordered? Did you? This is the thing. When Israel, with the help of the United States, dismantles the whole notion of international law, you don't get to cry about other countries committing war crimes against you, because what's good for the goose is good for the mother effing gander, okay? I don't want civilians to perish. I don't want people to get killed. But Israel did this. When you slaughter tens of thousands, I think the number's higher, hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza, and you just think, well, we have God tier immunity from international law. We don't have to suffer any consequences for anything. Other countries are gonna look at your conduct, look at your behavior and say, great, I guess the rules don't apply to any of us. So congratulations. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Yoav Kaufman writes, not gonna lie, feeling a bit down. Maybe it's being mostly stuck at home the last almost 2 weeks and knowing it'll be another 4 or 5 weeks at least. seems like the Israelis are being informed way more than the Americans are in regard to how long this war is going to drag on. Sirens and missiles still happening frequently enough to disrupt sleep. Gee, I wonder how all those people in Gaza who had their homes razed are sleeping in their tents, knowing that they can hear the drones above their heads, knowing that Israel decides to do strikes against them in their tents sporadically, allegedly firing at Hamas. Right. But anyway, he continues, the cause is good, though, if and when we achieve regime change, which, sorry, Yoav, isn't going to happen. Enjoy the shelter. Alon writes, the historic victory over Iran and Hezbollah was so historic that we're now sitting in the shelter for the fourth time today, after a series of combined barrages from Iran and Hezbollah. Now, remember, Iran and Hezbollah didn't just start attacking Israel out of nowhere. Israel and the United States attacked first. Like, what did they expect to happen? That they wouldn't be attacked, that there wouldn't be any retaliation? And they are getting sick of their shelters. There's a video that shockingly CBS published featuring beachgoers in Tel Aviv fleeing for their lives as they hear the sirens go off. So let's take a quick look at that. Who wants to live like that? I mean, they just wanted to enjoy the beach. Sorry, your beach vacay was disrupted. But there's more posts. I want to go to this one. This is from Misa Rumi, who says, we're facing a great ordeal and seek the Lord's assistance for deliverance. And as you can see in her post, she included some footage of missiles and interceptors, which she could get into a lot of trouble for posting because the Israeli government doesn't want the residents of Israel doing that. But my personal favorite is this. The news of Banaya's passing, son of Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, has left us heartbroken. May his memory forever be a blessing, and may his soul rest in eternal peace. I'm just gonna leave that there, and you guys can do with that information what you will. And then there are posts showing some of the damage that Iran's missiles and drones have caused. Trey Yinks, it might be one of the only reporters who's been able to report on the ground in Israel and actually show us some pretty devastating footage of what the Israelis are going through. So let's take a look at the next video.
Rescue crews searched through a destroyed apartment in the heart of Tel Aviv. Piles of concrete and rubble lay on a walkway nearby. This is the aftermath of a cluster munition strike.
Then I went to this shelter. You can see this shelter. To this shelter, and let's say few seconds after the siren was a very huge explosion.
First responders are here at a scene in Tel Aviv where an Iranian cluster munition exploded after it was launched in the latest ballistic missile barrage. You can see the amount of rubble and debris here. First responders say multiple people are being treated with shrapnel injuries, and there are at least a dozen impact sites.
Now, public polling out of Israel indicates that the Israeli population is still highly supportive of this war. And when I say this war, I mean, it's kind of leaving out the fact that they're taking drone strikes and missile strikes from Hezbollah out of Lebanon simultaneously. Congratulations, I guess. I don't think any of this needs to happen. None of it. But this is what Netanyahu wanted specifically. And I guess he's done a great job convincing the Israeli population that this is all in their best interest, as their homes are being destroyed, as they're running into shelters multiple times a day. Who, again, wants to live like this? I just don't get it. And it doesn't look like the Iranian regime will be toppled. Final thing I'll go to is there was footage on Monday showing several cluster munitions from an Iranian medium-range ballistic missile hitting central Israel. Again, this was on Monday morning. Let's take a quick look at that. All right, let's keep my mic up. Is my mic up? Okay, all right. So, I mean, there isn't that much to see there, but that is central Israel. You can see that, there wasn't an interceptor that struck that down. Nothing intercepted it. Obviously, there are, strikes that hit the ground, hit buildings, hit civilian infrastructure, which, is a war crime. There's no question about that. But in this new age that we're living in, apparently war crimes don't matter. When you have one country, again, dismantle the whole notion of international law, well, you have a world of pain to look forward to. And that's what we're dealing with right now. So the lack of reporting, the insane censorship that's going down in Israel right now really counters the argument that Israel is a free and open democratic society, doesn't it? I mean, I already knew that, considering the fact that they operate an apartheid state where they won't allow the Palestinians to have their own state and own government, and instead decide, no, we're just going to force you to live under our rule, under subpar conditions. We're going to mow the lawn in Gaza. We're going to continue taking more and more territory. We're going to allow Israeli settlers to rain terror on Palestinians in the West Bank and steal their homes, steal their land. That's not a democracy. Sorry. So it remains to be seen whether the Israeli public is going to, wake up to the fact that this is not really benefiting them at all. But who knows? They've got those expansionist dreams, and I think they're willing to do just about anything to have those, borders expand at any cost. So we're seeing some of those costs right now. When we come back from the break, an update on the Iranian elementary school that was bombed. It appears that now our own military has reached a conclusion about it. We'll be right back.
First comes strength, then comes peace.
All right, everyone. I'm going to do a rapid fire round of some of these super chats since I can read some member comments during the bonus episode, although I will also read some member comments during the show. So Christina Lisa Brown says, thought it was because Anna was too good. Love the hair. Thank you. Multi Phoenix says, what opportunity did you lose because of your stance on Israel? I was writing for a publication I loved. I didn't do any foreign policy reporting for them. In fact, I did more local domestic reporting for them, but apparently someone on their board had it out for me because they don't like my opinion on Israel, so they fired me last week. But that's okay. I'm gonna keep running my mouth. Let's go to Sikander on YouTube, who says, Anna, I'm reading these blind, and I get embarrassed when you guys say this, but okay. Anna, you are stunning and multi-talented. It's already unfair, but being fearless with the truth too. Be honest. Do you have a clone I can date? I don't have a clone, but I promise you there are plenty of women out there who you would be interested in and who care about the things I talk about. Let's go to Konstantin Kaviris, who says, one of our biggest mistakes with Iran. I love this comment, by the way. It's so well put. War is a tool of diplomacy, and we use diplomacy as a tool of war. Absolutely. Good point. Let's get back to the show. All right, let's get back to the news. Actually, let me read a few comments from our members before I do that. I want to thank Happy Warrior, who sent us a TYT gift membership. Melody Loves Music sent six. That's amazing. Thank you. Lady AF sent 5 TYT gift memberships. And we also have Christina Lisa Brown, who sent a TYT membership as well. Thank you for the support. Thank you for keeping us honest, independent, free from any type of censorship, free from concerns that some, shady Zionists on some secretive board are going to fire us because we dare to tell the truth about what's going on in the world. We love you guys. Thank you for your support. AJ Virginia says Israel is in the driver's seat here. And this is what Bibi wanted. American taxpayers and our service members are just along for Bibi's ride. Look, I mostly agree with you. But let's not take agency away from our leaders, okay? The president of the United States, our members of Congress were elected to represent us, not a foreign country. And by the way, just disgusting conduct from Senator Ted Cruz when it comes to ensuring that Colonel Daniel Davis wouldn't get confirmed for Trump's administration. He's one of the best foreign policy analysts that I've heard from. And it would have actually really helped Trump if he was willing to listen to people who know what they're talking about. Anyway, let's get back to the show. A lot more to get to. I want to talk about the latest when it comes to that elementary school that was bombed in Iran. It was part of the opening salvo in this disastrous war. We do have some updates.
As Commander-in-Chief, do you for what? For the strike on the school in Iran, a new report says the military investigation has found it was the United States that struck the school.
I don't know about it.
I don't know. Well, an ongoing military investigation has in fact found that sadly, shamefully, the United States is in fact responsible for the Tomahawk missile strike against an Iranian elementary school that ended up killing 168 children, mostly little girls, and 14 teachers. But Trump is saying he doesn't seem to know about it. I think he does know about it, and he just refuses to take ownership of a devastating strike. Now, look, I might be naive. I don't think that the US military struck an elementary school on purpose. I do think it was a mistake, but it was a devastating mistake. And what compounds that mistake is the fact that our leadership will not take responsibility and say sorry. That brings me personally a lot of shame. I don't know about the rest of the country, but this is not leadership. These were innocent little girls, innocent little students, kids for the most part, who were killed, and we were responsible for it. We absolutely have to apologize. We have to take accountability for it. All right, well, the US is the only participant in this war that even has Tomahawk missiles. Even Israel is not in possession of Tomahawk missiles. Trump tried to claim, oh, well, the Iranians have purchased Tomahawk missiles. No, they haven't. No, they haven't. That's a complete and utter lie. Just for once in your life, take ownership, take accountability. But anyway, according to new reporting, old data could be one of the main reasons why this strike happened in the first place. Officers at US Central Command created the target coordinates for the strike using outdated data provided by the Defense Intelligence Agency. People briefed on the investigation said. The school in the Iranian town of Manab is on the same block as buildings used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Navy, a top target of the US military strikes. The site of the school was originally part of the base. Officials briefed on the inquiry said the building was not always used as a school, though it was not clear precisely when the school opened on the site. Well, there was previous investigations into the strike, and the investigations and reporting on those investigations indicated that as early as 2016, that school or that building where the school operated out of was no longer part of the base at all. It was totally separate. So they very likely used old information. So you can see the school and the Iranian military buildings here. So you'll see the school like in the middle, like toward the top of the image. And then at the bottom of the image, or at the bottom of that school, you'll see where the IRCG compound is. So the investigation is looking into other factors that could be responsible for this devastating mistake, including the use of artificial intelligence models, which can we please stop doing that? Can we please stop effing using AI to carry out slaughter and war? We can't even get AI to give us accurate information. Okay, when we're looking something up, it hallucinates and gives us inaccurate information all the time. But we're gonna rely on AI models to carry out acts of war? This country is so depraved. And when I say that, I'm not talking about the people. I love the American people. When I say depraved, I mean our corporations first and foremost, and our leadership. Just how disgusting are these people? Oh, we've got some new technology. We can't wait to use it to slaughter people, even before we've perfected it. Because who cares? It's just human lives, right? Who cares? Data crunching programs might be another factor. Other technical intelligence gathering means, whatever. The US effed up, big time. But have we learned anything from it? Are we gonna adjust? That remains to be seen. Officials say that the error is most likely human error and not AI. I don't believe them. The big question is, why would the US even fire that close to an elementary school? Regardless of the evidence proving that the US did this, the US did this. Let's just keep it real. Please take ownership, stop embarrassing us. But Trump still wants to play dumb, so here he is.
Tonight, this new video geolocated and verified by NBC News shows what experts say is a US Tomahawk missile over the skies of Manab, Iran, adding evidence, the experts say, that an American missile likely hit the Shadre Taibeh Elementary School.
You just suggested that Iran somehow got its hands on a Tomahawk and bombed its own elementary school on the first day of the war. But you're the only person in your government saying this. Even your defense secretary wouldn't say that when he was asked, standing over your shoulder on your plane on Saturday. Why are you the only person saying this?
Because I just don't know enough about it. I think it's something that I was told is under investigation. But Tomahawks are used by others, as you know.
That's the commander-in-chief saying openly, overtly, candidly, I don't know enough about it. The buck stops with you. Just absolute incompetent, embarrassing buffoon. We are so humiliated on the international stage right now. Luckily, some Republicans were savvy enough, smart enough to avoid following Trump's lead on this. NBC asked, I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe I'm about to give him credit, but he deserves it. NBC asked Senator John Kennedy about the bombing, and he actually did apologize. And I want to thank him for that. He says, quote, "It was terrible. We made a mistake. Other countries do that sort of thing intentionally, like Russia. We would never do that intentionally. By the way, intentionally like Israel too, by the way. Like, I mean, come on, how many schools were bombed by the Israelis? Come on, okay. But let me go back to this. We would never do that intentionally. I think the department is investigating it now, and I'm sorry. I'm just so sorry it happened. It was a mistake." Now, when I look at Senator Kennedy, I don't think leader, but the fact that he has the wherewithal to take accountability and apologize, and our president doesn't, is just so utterly shameful. Laura Ingraham, to her credit, just wouldn't let the story go. And she wanted clarity on what actually took place. She called for accountability on X, saying, re-upping what I said last week. Administration must wrap up its investigation and address head on horrible unintended tragedy of this war. And even Jennifer Griffin, a hardcore Zionist who literally operates out of the Pentagon as she serves as Fox News's chief national security correspondent, admitted only the United States could have carried out the strike against the Iranian elementary school. These are not lefties, guys, okay? Here's Griffin.
Seems highly unlikely that it would be anyone's tomahawk other than a US tomahawk that hit that school. And I think the president knows that. He just knows that this is certainly a mistake, a big mistake, and it's being investigated, but he's trying to sort of muddy the waters by talking about the tomahawks. There's no evidence that the Iranians fired anything at this school. If you look at the satellite imageries, and there've been a lot of investigations from the air, from these satellite photos showing the impact and showing the likelihood that it was a tomahawk.
Earlier this week, Trump stated that, whatever the report shows, he's willing to live with. It doesn't seem that way, but nonetheless, officials emphasize that these findings that I'm sharing with you are preliminary. There are still some important unanswered questions about why the outdated information had not been double checked before the strikes took place. Like you couldn't bear just a few minutes to double check. You just carry out the strike anyway. Okay. And according to UN experts, schools are civilian objects and children are expressly protected under international humanitarian law. Directing attacks against civilian objects, including schools, unless they become military objectives, is prohibited under treaty and customary international humanitarian law, and indiscriminate attacks are strictly prohibited. Now, again, I don't believe the US military carried out a strike against an elementary school on purpose. I do think they made a mistake. I do think they relied on old information, and I do think they failed in double checking the information before carrying out the strike. If there is evidence to prove otherwise, if there's evidence to prove that we did carry out a strike like this on purpose, I don't know if I could live with that, okay? But I just don't believe it at this moment. Nonetheless, the real devastation for the American people lies in the White House, where we don't have a leader. We have someone acting as if he's a teenager who just got caught with a bag of weed. Refusing to take ownership, refusing to take accountability, refusing to apologize. Which, if you're an adult with a bag of weed, I don't think you need to. But as a teenager, not good for the brain. Anyway, so there you have it. I'm pretty convinced at this point that it was the US that did this. And I would like to see the White House, again, take ownership and apologize. Let's take a break. When we come back, we've got a lot more to get to, including Megyn Kelly just stomping on those neocons. I'll show you how when we come back.
You're smoking some of the best dope God ever put breath in. Smoking some of the best dope God ever put breath in. You're smoking some of the best dope God ever put breath in.
Call a crackhead. That was in an ad that Senator Kennedy put out for his reelection some years ago. It was during the BLM protests, and he's like, "Oh, you don't like the cops? Well, call a crackhead." Like to help you if you need, help from the police. Anyway, lots of comments to get to. Let's go to Wildcard KK, who says, too much hair gel for Trump. He's getting delusional. He's been delusional. Little Max Corner says, Anna, I'm so sorry to hear you lost the opportunity. I think you did. No, I got your back, and it is their loss. Without you, just know I won't be there. I got my home right here. Thank you so much, little Max Corner. Although I think you might be talking about Her Take. Her Take did not fire me. I fired myself. I couldn't do it anymore. I'll just leave it there. Let's go to Dav Mill, who says Admiral Nemans testified in Nuremberg on behalf of German Admiral Dominoes, likely misspelled. If he's a war criminal, then so am I, as he torpedoed civilian ships supplying Japan. Damn, Thank you for that history lesson, Dab. I appreciate that. In Liberty and Guns We Trust, I'll read your comment when we come back from the break.
You're Willie Nelson High.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the show. Remember, we will be having a members only bonus episode today where we will talk about Iran trolling Trump with a Lego video. So definitely check that out. tyt.com/join to become a member if you're not one already. I'm gonna read one quick comment, then we'll go to our last story for the main show. So In Liberty and Guns We Trust wrote in and said, many years when it's all said and done, I don't think I'll ever forget the atrocities we're living through, from the genocide in Gaza to the Iran oil rain and girls' school bombing. We're all scared. No. The last 2.5 years changed me for sure. Definitely changed me. And I think I have a firmer grasp on how the world works, and it's not good. I'll never forget Hind. I think about her sporadically throughout the week. I'll never forget the two little sisters. One of the sisters, the younger one, had her leg injured as a result of what's been going on in Gaza. So her older sister was carrying her. Her older sister's like 7 or 8, by the way, carrying her, looking for shelter. No family, no one's around, absolute devastation everywhere. Buildings are just razed to the ground. It's just, I'll never forget it. So thank you for writing in and helping me feel less alone in, what I go through personally, internally, as I share these stories with you all. And as our team works on producing these stories for you all. Anyway, let's get to this one.
I mean, Sean Hannity is Lindsey Graham by a different name. It's amazing to me to watch them cheerlead this. I mean, we've got 7 US personnel dead. They know exactly what President Trump wants to see and the messaging he wants to hear. And it is as bellicose and war hungry as you could possibly imagine.
I don't know about you all, but I personally am enjoying being a viewer of Megyn Kelly's, a bit of a renaissance, I guess, a little bit of an enlightenment that she's going through, because she has taken some jabs at her former colleagues over at Fox. She's taking jabs at the warmongers within the Republican Party, and she herself is still very much on the right. And I'm here for it. I'm here to watch it. I love it because it needs to be said. And I think that Tucker Carlson has given other conservatives permission to see US foreign policy for what it really is. Now, Megyn Kelly decided to shred Sean Hannity. You got a little taste of that. Lindsey Graham and President Donald Trump for dragging the United States into a Middle East war on behalf of a foreign country. So here's more of Kelly.
It is an isolationist or non-interventionalist worst nightmare. It is exactly the opposite of what President Trump ran on. Exactly the opposite. And yet Fox News is salivating over the prospect of more war, an extended conflict, and Lindsey Graham is its spokesperson. And President Trump seems to be enjoying that, because if he weren't, we wouldn't be seeing that anymore.
You do be seeing Lindsey Graham on Fox News quite a bit these days. Like, I feel like he makes multiple Fox News appearances per day. He's like sweaty. He seems a little bit manic, like super excited, like salivating over the thought of like bombs dropping on the heads of civilians in these Middle Eastern countries, like totally depraved lunatic. And it feels good that for once you're hearing people who aren't on the left call it what it is, okay? These people are warmongers, and Trump did renege on pretty much everything he campaigned on in 2024. So over the past few days, we've shown you numerous clips of Trump and Lindsey Graham. And rather than watch even more of them, why don't we take a look at what Sean Hannity's broadcast looked like last night?
A little advice to anyone still alive in Iran's Navy. Dock your vessel head to dry land and maybe want to go home and join your families. Earlier, President Trump told our own Trey Yanks that Iran's leaders are desperate to negotiate. But before this beatdown, this latest beatdown, Iran was not even interested in giving an inch on their quest, their desire, their ambition for nuclear weapons. Remember, repeatedly, the president said over and over and over he would much prefer a deal. You know, there are a lot of conspiracy theorists out there. I've known the president for 30 years, Steve. He's a man of his own mind. If he makes up his mind, it's his mind. People suggesting, oh, he was doing Israel's bidding. And I asked Bibi. Bibi actually laughed when I asked him. Or Israel's bidding.
You know what I got out of that video? That I need to be a lot more kind and empathetic to ordinary people, normies, who regurgitate the bile and lies you just heard from Hannity, because people are being intentionally misled and it makes me really angry. But rather than get frustrated with normal people, which I do time to time, and I need to stop doing that, we need to direct our ire to the propagandists who are lying to the American people. Iran did not have nuclear weapons, number one. Literally days before the war started, the mediator from Oman, who was part of, the negotiations over Iran's enrichment of uranium, went on one of those, Sunday shows and told them, here is what the Iranians are willing to do. They're willing to go much further than they did for the JCPOA. They are willing to stop enriching uranium, period. And here you have Sean Hannity lying to his audience and making it seem as though the Iranians didn't want to negotiate. So that's why Trump decided to attack. No. Trump pretended like the administration was interested in negotiating and then struck Iran, not just once last summer in the 12-day war, but twice in this now ongoing war in Iran. They just flip it on its head. So in other words, the Fox News audience loathes Iran and thinks that, like, oh my God, we need to stop Iran immediately. When in reality, everything they're hearing, every accusation they're hearing about Iran, Israel's carrying out, the US is carrying out, just the most dishonest scumbags imaginable over at Fox News. Disgusting. And I'm very happy to see their former colleague, Megyn Kelly, call them out. Now, even when you leave cable news, though, you will find some defenders of the Iran war. I think about the, trigonometry podcast. Like, they love it. They can't get enough of it. I mean, they're in the UK. Like, are you guys dragging your soldiers into a war on behalf of Israel? But anyway, so let's actually go to Ben Shapiro. He's one of the people who's not necessarily on cable news. He's doing his own thing with his podcast, which is losing viewership rapidly. But let's watch his response to Joe Rogan, who said that Trump betrayed his base by starting a war in the Middle East.
Joe is a skeptic of intervention. It's fair enough, but his arguments are not convincing. Joe keeps insisting that this is an endless war. Now, that's wild because we are less than 2 weeks into the war, and it's not going to last probably more than another 2 weeks. When Michael Schellenberger pointed this out on his show, Joe then responded that all wars are endless, which, they're not. By the way, Joe happens to be wrong on the numbers in terms of people feeling betrayed who are in MAGA. MAGA remains behind President Trump foursquare. According to a brand new YouGov Economist poll, 91% of MAGA supporters approve of the way Trump is handling Iran. 83% of Republicans overall approve. No one is feeling betrayed unless they fundamentally misunderstood President Trump's foreign policy from the get-go.
Right, Ben, but as we all know, you're not going to get regime change in Iran by fighting a war through the air. So the airstrikes are not going to topple the regime. You would need boots on the ground. And so how do Republican voters feel? How does Trump's base feel about boots on the ground? Because the same polling that he's citing indicates that the vast majority of Americans, and that includes Republicans, don't want to see boots on the ground. Israel's objective is regime change, and they say that they won't stop until they get regime change. So that could lead to a forever war, couldn't it? But even more importantly, Iran is no longer interested in peace negotiations because they have tried to engage in peace negotiations on multiple occasions and they got sucker punched by the United States on 2 occasions. So now they're ready to punish the US and Israel. So there's no benefit to the United States by fighting this war. Israel will probably win no matter what. I mean, look, if they fail in toppling the regime, then they're actually going to be worse off because I'm sure Iran will now race toward a nuclear weapon. I mean, why wouldn't you? You need a deterrent when you have a belligerent country and its belligerent ally attacking constantly. How is that going to put Israel in a better place? It's not. You now have Ali Khamenei's son, who's a hardliner, as the Grand Ayatollah or the supreme leader in Iran. It's just a mess. It's a mess. So we've already lost 7 soldiers. Even if this doesn't end up being a forever war, why did we lose 7 soldiers to fight a war on behalf of a foreign country, Ben? We're spending $1 to $2 billion a year on this. I'm sorry, a day, not a year. $1 to $2 billion a day on this war against Iran, Ben. But do the Trump voters, the individuals who make up his base, who say that they're pleased with what Trump is doing, do they know all these details? Or are these details that are being withheld from them by people like you and Sean Hannity and other anchors over at Fox News? I think we know what the answer to that is. Shapiro, by the way, was responding to remarks that Rogan made on his podcast this week. And Rogan ended up doubling down. Here is the clip.
The problem is from the outside, like the rest of the world, you look at this unnecessary aggression by the United States government, and then you tack on whatever propaganda they have already been spitting out about America for the last 20 or 30 years. And then this war with Iran gets really ugly, because that's how you start a World War III. You start a World War III by doing something that, other than people that wanted this forever, who else thinks that's a good idea? Who else thinks it's a good idea to just attack a country that isn't doing anything? They haven't done anything. Like, if you've proof that they have developed the depleted uranium and they've got it up to a point where they've got it to what percentage does it have to be?
90%. Iran had enriched uranium to 60%. I believe that they wanted a latent deterrent. Unfortunately, it didn't serve as a deterrent, and the US attacked anyway. You know what the US isn't attacking? North Korea, Pakistan, other nuclear armed countries. You know which countries did end up getting attacked? The countries that gave up their nuclear weapons: Ukraine, Libya. So you have to take a step back and think of these states as rational actors. They act based on incentives and disincentives. So in the case of Iran, I am sure that they are seeing the lack of a nuclear arsenal as basically what made them vulnerable to the attacks by the United States. The US wouldn't have attacked otherwise. And I should note, for all of the whining and crying you hear from the Israeli government about how Iran is such a big threat to them, we're talking about a nuclear armed country. Israel is. They don't acknowledge their nukes. They're not part of the non-proliferation treaty when every other nuclear power happens to be. So do I actually believe that Israel sees Iran as a genuine threat? I don't believe them at all. But Israel does fund proxy groups like Hezbollah, which was established and Iran started funding in the 1980s after Israel tried to annex land in Lebanon. So Hezbollah was established to prevent that from happening, prevent Israel from stealing land from Lebanon. So Israel engages in actions that leads to the formation of militias and various groups that they don't like, but they'll never take ownership of their failed policies. They'll never take ownership of how their whole agenda of expanding their borders and annexing land makes them a target. Because let me tell you something, I have no doubt that if Mexico or Canada decided, you know what, we want to expand, we're gonna go ahead and encroach into US territory, oh, we'd go to war. We would. And right now, the Lebanese government, which by the way, your country is getting pummeled right now. And I get the anger toward Hezbollah, but really Hezbollah is the only group that's trying to protect Lebanon from the Israelis encroaching and stealing more land. It breaks my heart to see what's happening in Beirut right now. So that's what Israel wants to do. They want to get rid of the challenge that they face as they try to expand, and Iran prevents them from doing it. So that's not to say I agree with the system of government in Iran, and I want the people of Iran to live in the type of society where they get to decide who their leaders are. But honestly, at the end of the day, what happens with their business and their government is their business. It's not my business. It's not your business. It's not the United States government's business. And it sure as hell ain't Israel's business. All right, bonus episode is next. I want to talk a little bit about Trump's attacks against Thomas Massie. He's campaigning pretty hard to get rid of Massie, one of the only principled lawmakers we have in Congress right now. And then we've got that Lego video that Iran put out to troll President Donald Trump. I'll also read some of your member comments, so write in. I will dedicate a significant portion of the bonus to read and respond to some of your comments. But for everyone else, if you're not a member, you can become one by going to tyt.com/join. That way you can watch the bonus episode that comes right after this. And for everyone else, I bid you adieu. Good night. Love you guys.